Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Usually, at this time of the service, I offer something connected to the weekly Torah portion, to what we call the Parsha. But tonight, I want to talk to you about another text that is going to be read tomorrow, which is the Haftorah. As many of you know, every Parsha, every weekly Torah portion is accompanied by a text from the prophetic books, from what we call the Nevi'im. The Nevi'im, the books of the prophets, are divided between what we call Nevi'im Rishonim, which are mainly historical books, the first prophets, and then the later prophets, which are books of actual prophecy. And tomorrow's Haftorah is taken from the early prophets, meaning from a historical book, which is the book of Judges. And it's a text that usually people don't learn at Hebrew school, people don't learn when they go to a Jewish day school, because it's not a text that you would teach a young person, because it is pure tragedy. But I believe it's very much connected to what we are living through in terms of what is happening in Israel and the expectations that we have of hopefully a ceasefire and a return of the hostages. The text of tomorrow's Haftorah is the story of Yiftach Hagil Adi. Those of you who are usually, attend my summer Bible series, you may remember 2 years ago, the theme of our Bible series was the book of Judges, and learned a lot about, we devoted a whole class on Yiftach Hagil Adi. Those of you who are not, usual readers of the Bible may have no clue who is Yiftach Hagil Adi. So let me give you a brief introduction. The Bible tells about a time in which the Israelites were attacked by a foreign nation, a nation of enemies, a nation with whom they have had an enmity since the days of the Torah, meaning a nation with whom we carried more than a century of hostility. These are the Ammonites. Actually, the hostility goes back to the days of the patriarchs. That's when everything began. Ammon is one of the children of the illicit, the adulterous relationship between Lot and his daughters. Ammon's twin brother is Moab, which we know from the book of Ruth. So the Israelites have been attacked by the Ammonites, caught by surprise, and defeated. And in the midst of that defeat, a new charismatic leader arises among the children of Israel, and his name is Yiftach. And there seems to be some kind of agreement between the people of the different tribes to crown Yiftach as the leader, as the commander-in-chief of the Israelite nation, so that they can, years later, lead a battle against Ammon, seize the pieces of land that had been taken by the Ammonites, and of course retrieve Israeli or Jewish dignity, which had been lost in that battle. So any similarity with current events, it's not a coincidence. The thing is that Yiftach knows that he needs to wage war against Israel's longtime enemy, the nation of the Ammonites, and he needs to be victorious. And in those days, it was very common, if you wanted to ask for God's help when you go out to war, it was very common to promise God something. If you help me win this war, I will X. It was a very common practice, not only among the Israelite nation, but also in other nations of the area in ancient times, to try to get God's support when one would go to war, and to promise God that if we are crowned with victory, we're going to give God something. Now that something usually takes the shape of a sacrifice, an offering. These are days in which, among the Israelites, it was very common to offer sacrifices in the altar. That was our way of worship in ancient times. And Yiftach has no better idea to say the following words. And I'm going to read literally from the Tanakh, from chapter 11, verse 30 of the book of Judges. It says, "And Yiftach made the following vow to the Lord. If you deliver the Ammonites into my hands, then whatever comes out of the door of my house to meet me on my safe return from the Ammonites shall be the Lord's and shall be offered by me as a burnt offering. So, of course, Yiftach is thinking here, choice, cattle, maybe a cow, maybe a sheep, maybe a goat, could be a chicken, could be a bull if we are on a lucky day. Whatever comes and approaches me from the door of my house to welcome me victorious into my land, I will offer to you in an altar as a burnt offering. Now the Haftorah ends there. And we don't know what happens next unless we are readers of the Bible and we continue reading the text of the book of Judges where tragedy occurs. Because the text tells us that when Yiftach, of course Yiftach won this war, God delivered the Ammonites in his hands, and when Yiftach returns home victorious, ready to offer to God whatever approaches him as he returns home, his daughter leaves his house. And Yiftach will have to choose whether to fulfill this binding vow that he had made to God and offer his own daughter as a burnt offering in the altar, or to run away from the vow, not fulfill the promise, and perhaps lose the battle. And the interesting thing is that the text doesn't tell us how the story ends. We don't know what happened. We never hear again about Yiftach's daughter. Was she offered by him as a sacrifice or not? We never know. What we do know, and now I want to fast forward 3,000 years, is that young innocent children sometimes pay the price of victory when it comes to important wars. And we know that the war that the state of Israel is fighting, and thank God, with the support of the United States of America, is an existential war. We know that the war against Hamas first, but then against Hezbollah, and lastly against the terrorist regime in Iran, is a war that needs to be fought. We know that just like in the days of Yiftach, we have been led by courageous warriors. Both the state of Israel and the United States of America were led by warriors that were ready to make the courageous decisions whenever they need to be made. But we also know that just like Yiftach's daughter, there are still 20 hostages that are alive in Gaza, in the hands of Hamas. And of course, last week and the week before and the week before, all of our eyes and our intentions and our prayers were with what was going on with the war with Iran. We were praying for our brothers and sisters in Israel who were being attacked by missiles. We were praying that the United States of America was going to give Israel the long-awaited support that finally came in the shape of these bunker buster bombs that destroy or at least severely damaged the Iranian facilities at Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan. But now that episode of the war is over, the Jewish tradition demands from us that we return our focus to the innocent civilians that may be the price of this war. We don't want them to be the price of Israeli victory. Yes, the war was necessary, just like the war against Ammon that Yiftach led. Just like in the story of the Bible, the end is open. And maybe if we stop thinking about them, then they will be the price that we pay for victory, and they will be offered as a burnt offering in the altar. I hope and pray that that is not the case. But I truly believe that a lot of it depends on us. Our eyes must be right now in Gaza. Our prayers and our spiritual energies, our posts on social media, and our conversations with leaders, with elected officials, with people who can influence those who are in power, must be focused on freeing the hostages. Israel, paying a very high price, won the war against Hamas, won the war against Hezbollah, and won the war against Iran. The question is, can we declare victory if 20 of our brothers and sisters are still in the hands of brutal terrorists that we have no idea what they could be doing to them? I think the answer is no. I think we will only declare victory when the last of the hostages returns home. And so in the days, in the hours in which we know right now, Israeli diplomats and intelligence officers are deepening their conversations with Hamas thanks to the mediation of the United States of America. I truly hope and pray that next week we welcome good news of a truce, of a ceasefire, and hopefully of many of those hostages returning home. Let's not forget that as much as we would love to declare victory, there is no victory if young kids of 20, 25, 30 years old who were having fun, chilling, or maybe even sleeping in a Saturday morning in the kibbutzim of the Gaza envelope are still at the hands of the terrorists. Let's pray together that they soon return home, and only then we will be able to declare victory. We don't know what happened to the daughter of Yiftach. We could imagine. I hope that the fate of the Israeli hostages is different than her fate.